Sparks that I don't remember. Hold and let it shine. Fix and start to fade away. Fix and start to fade away. Fix and start to fade away.
Hello friends of Kabala International. We are once again with our dear friend Mario Sabán.
Shalom.
Shalom, Mario. Let's continue working on evil, Satan's strategies. And I would like us to go deeper into the concept of perfection as one of Satan's tools and weapons.
Well, look, there is a problem that, for me, comes from Greek philosophy related to the word perfection, related to the word perfect. Because the word perfect, in my opinion, in the Kabbalah we should not use it. What we could use is complete. Because when I ask, well, tell me what is the perfect table? What is the perfect table? There are so many types of tables and most work according to the need of how this table was created. So the question is, what is perfection? Perfection is the idea of finding or searching for an absolute within the fragment, within the world of fragmentation. So, there is no absolute. The perfect absolute would have to be outside of time and would have to be outside of space. That is, the infinite could be called perfect, because he, somehow within himself, has the capacity for eternity and infinity, which would be the equivalent of perfection. For example, perfect justice. What is perfect justice? Perfect justice is impossible. There is justice or injustice, but there is no perfect justice. Neither is there perfect love. So, to look for something perfect implies that it lacks imbalances, and all reality is permanently unbalanced and permanently limited. Therefore, when someone is a perfectionist, he is seeking somehow, without realizing it, to control reality. The perfectionist, deep down, hides a lot of fear, because the perfectionist cannot control reality, and consequently, he always wants to control everything. The problem is that the more he wants to control, the more he gets out of control. That is, the perfectionist enters a kind of vicious circle where he can become a control freak, and this obsession to control brings more insecurity. And then, up to what point can this obsession with detail, control, and perfection be taken? The first problem a perfectionist brings is for himself, unless he is also a perfectionist for others. But this is a secondary issue for me. The perfectionist's problem is the suffering he causes himself, the guilt. Because the perfectionist declares himself guilty of never having reached perfection. So the problem of the perfectionist is that he questions and can lower his self-esteem a lot. Because the perfectionist, judging himself that he never achieved, that is, the perfectionist hardly congratulates himself. When something goes well, he does not congratulate himself. It has to be that way. When something goes wrong, he criticizes himself, he sinks. So, the perfectionist or perfectionism never motivates, because you're always either you did it the way it should be, so you're not motivated, or you did it wrong. So, when someone does something good, a 7, an 8, you have to congratulate them, or you have to congratulate yourself, because you have to motivate. The perfectionist cancels out motivation. Because I got an 8, it had to be 10. You have no compassion. The perfectionist is not compassionate with himself. He is a person who has no chesed with himself. Therefore, he also has no self-motivation. Therefore, he creates a permanent guilt. Of course, this can make the person sick. That is to say, because in a way, it makes the person never live up to his inner self. How do you get rid of this? How do you moderate this situation? Well, there is an idea that comes up which is a dialogue with the inner judge. That is to talk to oneself, with that unbalanced bina, and in some way to make this inner judge understand the degree of irresponsibility that he has in this possible maximum responsibility. The perfectionist believes himself to be highly responsible, and in reality, he is irresponsible for his hyper-responsibility. That is to say, he ends up being irresponsible because responsibility must have compassion, because responsibility must also have motivation, because there is also a responsibility to be happy, and of course, if the perfectionist is all the time controlling his possibilities of enjoyment of happiness, they are somehow annulled in this process. Therefore, we have to be very conscious of this imbalance, of this bina klipa, this imbalance of the bina, because basically what it does is to sink the tiferet, to lower the self-esteem, many times to draw too much strength. Look, many years ago I read an author who said, "What a pity that being such a perfectionist, I could never write a book." And then I started writing books after 10 years. And somehow he used to say, the worst thing about a poorly written draft is a blank page. The perfectionist in a way slows down the action. The perfectionist says, "I will not perform this action until I am sure of my own perfection." And when is the perfectionist sure of his own perfection? Never. The perfectionist provokes the Satan to perfection, a permanent omission, a permanent procrastination, because he is always doubting his potential. And actually we always have to doubt, but we have to doubt after having revealed. That is, we don't have to have a doubt that cancels the unfolding of the action, but what we have to do is to doubt afterwards, or ask ourselves how we can improve after the action. If you do not have a result to improve, because you have pushed yourself for perfection, for that idea of perfection, in reality you will never know what needs to be improved, because you have never reached that result. So, look at this. How do you write a book? A book comes from a draft that can be modified many times, but if there is no text, you can't modify anything. You have a blank page. So, perfectionism can lead you to a life of paralysis. That's why I say, the perfectionist creates much more fears within the personality when he tries to control everything. It becomes an internally fearful personality which lowers self-esteem. Therefore, to reinforce self-esteem to someone who is a perfectionist is very difficult, because as soon as their self-esteem starts to rise, the judge appears, who is criticizing him that he has not done well. And we already know that the perfectionist never did well, he never reached 10. So he does not have a 10 as a potential, as all human beings have. He has 10 as a demand, and he takes away your pleasure. That is, Satan, with the idea of perfection, takes away your pleasure because Satan declares you impotent, he declares you inept, but he declares you inept whether you reveal 4, 7, or whether you reveal 10. You are always inept because you could have 11. It's a superlative degree of demand which is never reached. So what is the perfectionist comparing me to, Ein Sof? I'm comparing myself to God. So if he compares me to God, I'm never going to get there. It's impossible. And that's a satanic force. There's a lot of people suffer from this.
Yes, the self-demand that causes that intense suffering of the soul, that imbalance in the Geburah of an enormous rigidity and discipline to achieve results.
Look, I consider myself to be self-disciplined but not self-demanding. And notice that they are two different things, because the self-demanding person suffers the process, and self-disciplined, as he is compassionate, he can understand that his discipline may relax a little. That's the point. The demanding one has no flexibility because he is not compassionate.
Yes, but these processes of imbalance are the ones that generate this process of suffering.
Of course, but that is why the perfectionist suffers. The perfectionist suffers and also suffers for others.
Well, also a little bit of acceptance that imperfection is part of the overall structure of the universe. Imperfection is part of the whole.
Conceptually we know it, but emotionally we do not. That is, for example, if I know that I can drop a glass, conceptually I understand that I can drop it. The day I drop it, I go crazy and say, how did I drop it? What a fool I was. Of course, because I don't accept it. We have to be careful that we really feel that concept inside, that it is an experience. That is to say that now, when I drop my glass, I say, thank God, I am imperfect. But well, it took me many years to reach this point. I do not congratulate myself because I dropped the glass, but I congratulate myself because I am imperfect. How happy I am. I drop the glass, and then I break everything. No, what I am basically getting at is, we are imperfect. We must recognize that imperfection, and when someone makes a mistake, is part of nature. But of course, conceptual conviction, I reiterate, is not an experiential conviction. What we have to do is to lower the mind to the core and to be convinced. I can tell you when I realized this, when I realized that I had assimilated the process of imperfection. Once, leaving the house where I lived, I closed the door and kept my finger inside. My finger was cut, blood came out, and despite the pain, I said, well, it is part of the imperfection. But it was very painful to say, it is part of the imperfection while the blood is jumping out of your finger. So at that point, I said, well, I think I have it built in. While I was trying to, of course, save the finger, no more blood coming out, I had cut myself. But at that moment I realized that in the experience I understood that I am imperfect. And there is compassion in the face of one's mistake and the other's mistake. Your judgment of the judgment or prejudice, because all judgment is prejudice, is annulled in front of the other. You are very compassionate with the error of the other and merciful because you realize that he can do as far as he can. Sometimes we have the pretension of believing that the other will give what we want him to give, but the other will give what he can give, not what we want him to give. Therefore, we again have a problem ourselves by projecting what we expect from the other. And then, when we get angry, we always get angry with ourselves. If someone makes a mistake and I get angry, I don't get angry at the other person. I get angry because I thought the other person was not going to make a mistake. It means I get angry because I did not accept the imperfection of the universe.
Of course, there is something that I think is also interesting to relate, which is the concept of completeness that you talked about, eradicating the concept of perfection, and talking about a concept of completeness and linking completeness with function.
Totally. The complete is the one that fulfills the function, not as a result, I would like to insist on this, but as a process. That is, we have another problem. We believe that something has to fulfill a definitive function. And nothing has a definitive function. The table will continue to be a table tomorrow, fulfilling the function of a table, and it will continue this process until the table is destroyed, broken, or something happens. That is to say, as long as it fulfills the function, this table is complete, because it is fulfilling its function. But that table is complete in a daily process, and this, in my opinion, we have to understand, the soul has to understand, because the idea of process is a very difficult concept, because we live in a society of results. Then, as we live in a results-based society, in addition to another problem, we are paid for results, which is even worse. So it is not only that we live mentally for results, but we are paid for results. So I can no longer go to the dentist and tell him we are going to enjoy the process. I am paying him while my tooth hurts. It is impossible. I go to the dentist, I pay him, and let him cure me, let him cure my tooth. So, as you will see, almost all professions have to show results, except those of us who work in the Kabbalah, thank God. Kabbalah people do not show results. We are working every day in the process. I would tell you that it is very difficult to get into the idea of process, because someone who wants results can become very tired in life. Some people get very tired in life because they believe that life is a system of results. And suddenly, when in 2 or 3 years the person does not achieve the expected results, they say, "My God, why don't I achieve the results?" They do not realize that they are not achieving results because they are not enjoying the process. When you start to enjoy the process and forget about the results appear.
Very well, Mario. Thank you very much. And we will continue our dialogue.
Shalom to all. Thanks.